Now we're going to look at a case study of MakerDAO. We're going to start with introducing what MakerDAO is, what they do, how it works, and then we're going to apply their mechanism design based on the framework, and just going to show you how it works. At the end of this, you can also download the MakerDAO token economics report, and that will have a lot more information. So if you are a person who likes to read more, that you can skip this to the last and then just download the report. Okay, so for those of you who continue to stay, what is MakerDAO? MakerDAO is a DAO-based platform to minimize volatility. DAO is decentralized autonomous organization, meaning that there's no central authority that governs it. It's people in the ecosystem that governs it. It's a DAO. And it wants to minimize volatility in prices. So it's a two-token model. Initially, we talk about two-token models, right? Where you have one token that's an internal token and one token that's an external token that coordinates between the on-chain and off-chain world. But in MakerDAO, they don't use that. They use MPR token, which is a utility token, and it's a governance token. And they use DAI. DAI is a stable token, or it's pegged to 1 USD. It's for payments and it's a currency. MPR token is a utility token. The utility is governance, and it governs DAI. It governs the price of DAI, it governs how the platform will be, and it governs things like stability fees for DAI. Stability fees is something like interest rates. So it's a governance token. How does it work? There's a smart contract, MakerDAO, and the input is collateral, which is ETH. So I give ETH to smart contract. Smart contract will output DAI. Very simple. So the objective of this is to be a global stable currency. I put stable in brackets because it's pegged to USD. It's relatively stable, and it's stable because MakerDAO platform, the platform itself, it wants to reduce volatility. So it's relatively stable, but it's not 100% stable. It's not like it doesn't change at all. And it's done through three ways. It's governed in a decentralized way. It's through autonomous feedback, and that is because it's a DAO system. People with MPR tokens get to feedback is being taken into consideration, and then you have different kind of incentive mechanisms. How does it work because it wants to be a global currency, right? So what role does it play in the financial world, or in the decentralized financial world, the DeFi world? First one is it's a bottom layer. MakerDAO is the bottom layer, and then it creates DAI, which is pegged to US dollars, and then this DAI is being used in the different DeFi products in the financial market. So you have other DeFi dApps that sits on top of MakerDAO, and it uses DAI to do whatever transactions. So let's look at a little bit more of how it works before we look at the different use cases. It uses CDP. So CDP is collateralized debt position. It comes from the traditional financial world of CDO, collateralized debt obligation. Same concept. You basically have an input, give to them. The smart contract will have this. Instead of a traditional contract for CDO, you have a smart contract for CDP, and the CDP will then generate DAI tokens. And when it generates DAI tokens, it accrues debt. This debt is basically an interest rate that, because you give the smart contract your ETH, and then you can take some DAI tokens out. It's not a one-to-one leverage. It's like not 100% leverage. As in, if I put $1 worth of ETH in there, I can't take out $1 worth of DAI, which is one DAI. Instead, I can only take out 66% because that's how the collateral system works. It's always over collateralized by at least 150%. So that means I can only take out 2/3 of the collaterals that I put in, which is 0.66 DAI, which is 0.66 US dollar. And then by doing this, by generating DAI tokens based on my collateral, I'm accruing debt. The debt is an interest rate. And another way in MakerDAO system, we call it a stability fee. And this interest rate or stability fee fluctuates, and the fluctuation right now is determined by MKR holders. So going back to the two-token ecosystem, you've got MKR tokens and DAI tokens. MKR tokens are governance tokens, and they are responsible for decision making. The value is determined by market forces, because with utility tokens, usually the prices are determined by market forces, and it's created or destroyed in accordance to price fluctuation. Whereas DAI tokens are pegged token, it's for payment and currency, and it's for currency, there are three features or functions. The first one is it's a form of payment. It's a form of payment via DeFi, because you can use DAI tokens on the other DeFi apps. It's a store of value, so one DAI is about $1. There's a fluctuation of, I think, 15%. Store of value is also, store of value and unit of account is both pegged to US dollar. It's not always 100% US dollar, $1, and it fluctuates. So this is the table that I took from the paper that I've written. I just took a screenshot because I want you to read the paper, because the paper has a lot more information, and the paper has a lot of footnotes as well for you to get more information about things that probably seems a bit too complicated. I'll send the link. I'll show you the link at the end of this slide. So you've got DAI and MKR. So the token function is different. DAI is a currency or money function, and MKR is utility. The purpose of DAI is it's a stable token, stable with reference to US dollar, is being pegged to US dollar. Maker, on the other hand, MKR, is a governance token, so MKR holders are responsible to make decisions, to vote on issues or proposals in the ecosystem. The value for DAI is basically from on-chain collaterals, and right now they're just using single asset, which is Ether, and you can borrow 66% worth of the collaterals that you give. In the near future, they're going to change to multi-collaterals, so you can collateralize other things like digital gold, digital platinum, digital silver, other currencies. It's possible. They're working on that. MKR's value is derived by supply-demand of MKR tokens via exchanges. There is a fixed amount of MKR tokens that's available, and it will be burnt or minted when necessary. How supply is created? When some DAI is created when someone has collateral, put it in CDP, and then you can generate DAI from there. Or you give DAI to the CDP, it burns that DAI, and then it returns collaterals to you. So you can create or burn DAI based on using CDP. On the other hand, MKR is created or destroyed in accordance to the price fluctuation of DAI. Not market forces, not the price of MKR, but how the prices of DAI. And if it's too high or too low, it will be burnt or minted, the MKR tokens. So let's go back to DeFi. And what are the use cases of DeFi? Who uses MakerDAO? So DeFi is used to improve transparency, speed, and accessibility. Transparency, because we use this blockchain, you can see transactions. Speed is also because some of them are also built on side chains, or you can have quicker access to other products. And accessibility, because we're also talking about banking the unbanked. Don't really know if they want to be banked, but we're talking about accessibility and improving accessibility to people. Also for derivatives, maybe some of them are not so accessible to people, and that's why you have DeFi, where you can level up the playing field a little bit more. So it's not a revolutionary change to the financial industry. It's just looking at new use cases, new products, new improved efficiency. So who uses MakerDAO in DeFi? So I use DeFi Pulse. It's a very nice website that looks at the different kind of participants in the DeFi ecosystem. And remember I told you there are 5 functions in DeFi. We've got lending, DEXs, like decentralized exchanges, derivatives, payments, and assets. Maker is in the lending industry, the lending move. And in there it fluctuates, Maker's dominance fluctuates. Of the couple of days that I've checked, sometimes it's from 80% all the way to just a little bit over 50%. So it moves quite a bit, Maker's dominance, but it's always number one. And so because Maker is the number one lending project in the DeFi space, you can imagine there are quite a lot of projects wanting to use Maker in their DeFi or accepting Maker in the DeFi products. So examples would be Loom Network. You've got Artem, Repo, CoinDirect, Wirex. They are basically projects in Latin America or Africa. Yeah. So looking at just using MakerDAO in more use cases, because Maker is just it's like one of the layers of the cake. So you have internet layer in the cake. Second layer is like blockchain. Third layer is Ethereum. Fourth layer is Maker. The fifth layer is the other DeFi dApps. Oops. So going back to mechanism design. So that's just general introduction. Going back to mechanism design, we have three areas that we're looking at. We look at governance, non-financial incentives, as well as structure. So in governance, we look at decision making and resolution, and how do we resolve issues when they occur. Non-financial incentives, we look at voting mechanisms and how do you allocate resources. And in structure, we're looking at bargaining mechanisms and aggregating information. So I'm just going to show you three slides, one on governance, one on non-financial incentives, one on structure, and the big thing on decision protocol and resolution mechanism. Then I share some mechanisms in place. There are more, especially for decision-making protocols, as well as the details specific to the mechanism. And there's a lot more details in the report, so I really encourage you to read the report. I'm just going to go through very high-level details with you, because if I'm going to read everything from the report, it's better that you just read the report, right? So, in general, these are the governance factors. We've got decision-making protocols as well as resolution. In decision-making, what we look at emergency oracles. So they have to choose a set of emergency oracles when a shutdown happens. A shutdown is where something happens in the off-chain world, like, I don't know, global financial crisis 2.0. And that would absolutely affect the prices of MKR and the whole MKR system. And they have to choose a set of oracles to trigger the shutdown. So which oracles should we trust? What kind of information should we trust? To what extent is the off-chain world's destabilization going to affect MKR? Decisions to be made. There are a lot of decisions to be made, and the MKR holders can make decisions. Risk parameters. MKR can change the different risk parameters, including the stability fee that I talked about, which is the interest rates. And they can also elect active proposals, and they reach a consensus to elect the proposals, then it will be executed by a smart contract. This is where humans and machines come together hand in hand and work together. In resolution mechanism, that's where what happens when CDP fails, new MKR tokens will be used to back DAI, because maybe CDP fails when it's under collateralized. Maybe there's something happens super suddenly and the value of everything falls, so MKR tokens will be minted. Or when there's an emergency shutdown, it's a 3-step emergency protocol that's executed automatically. What happens when DAI savings rates falls, and also when decision-making protocol, when they elected the active proposal, then the resolution mechanism will execute that proposal contract. For non-financial incentive, we're looking at voting protocols and allocation mechanism. So voting protocols is not just about the kind of votes that you have in place. I mean, we have that, but it's also about the types of vote and the parameters of vote. So you have vote types. There are two types of vote. They have time limited versus continuous, and you've got time limited governance vote. This is to achieve a rough consensus. There's no fees being done. Usually the votes comes in two ways. The first one is a proxy vote, which is time limited, and MKR holders can just vote on that. And then we have a continuous approval voting. There's a time limit to that. And then the second one is a continuous approval voting, where it's a form. People have to vote and they have to stake their MKR tokens to formalize the proposal to be implemented. And the vote calculation is done by the weighted amount of MQR per proposal against the total MQRs voted. Their voting weight is 1 MQR equals 1 vote. And the voting contract, a smart contract does that, and it locks MQRs in wallets. For allocation mechanism, it's smart contracts executing different things like burning and minting die. And stability fee is done by like a simple formula of you can see it over here. It's basically interest rates. So interest rates is being voted upon, and then the smart contract will execute it. Lastly, we have structure. So we've got bargaining protocol as well as community information. So for bargaining protocol, they have different auction types. So one is debt auction, when things are under collateralized, and you have collateral auction where it's being executed during liquidation. And they also have auction penalties. So just think of it as additional. You have to pay interest rates, and then you also have to pay liquidation penalties, which is a different interest rates. And then you have liquidation auction. So liquidation auction during liquidation period, that means maybe we want to close the entire MPR system. Then first you have an auction to raise die. So you have a traditional highest price bidder auction for die. And then once you raise enough die to cover your CDP debt, then it becomes reverse auction to sell the remaining CDP. Yeah, it's a bit complicated, but more explanation is done in the report, don't worry. And for community information, we use oracles. So we have there's price oracles, so it's a set of trusted oracles that gives real-time information. And this is important because right now it's only single collateral of collateralizing ETH. But as they move to multi-collateral, you want to get very accurate information like trusted oracles that feeds you information about the price of gold, silver, platinum, Bitcoin, and all the other things available. It also looked at continuous dynamic rebalancing. So you use oracles and the different mathematical algorithms to do that, to adjust stability fee. And we look at the different DeFi partners as oracle feeds. So, for example, they have DYDX, they have Compound as oracle feeds, and you have oracle governance. Because we talk about governance, we also talk about oracles, and what are the set of rules that oracles can play by, so the rights and responsibilities that oracles have. So that's about it. That's the general gist of their mechanism design for their token economics of MakerDAO. If you want to read more, I really encourage you to read more because it's very interesting. The paper is available online and it's very accessible. You can take your phone to scan this, or you can go to economicsdesign.com/portfolio/MakerDAO. It also includes some of the links if you want to get involved or where I get information, and a lot of footnotes to explain greater things in details.